Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Crypt Choir. I am your host, Lewis, otherwise known as Dixie Normus. And today I am joined by two of the other finalists in our tournament over at CARDART Round 5, I believe. We have our champion, Marco, otherwise known as Different Sock.
Hi, good evening, everybody.
And we have Skylar.
Hi.
So we're going to be going through our tournament experience over at CARDART and a bit about our finals game. So right away, I want to start out with Skylar. Skylar, how are you feeling going into this tournament?
I was pretty nervous. So a couple of weeks ago, we had a smaller tournament at Game Castle, which I ultimately ended up taking down. And
nice.
It kind of felt like a fluke. So I was like, I've got to do well at this one to kind of prove myself in a way. So I was a little nervous going in, but with the new additions from MH3 to Roxai, I was feeling excited as well. Yeah.
Right, I should have mentioned that. So in the finals in the tournament, I was playing Blue Farm. We have Marco on Kenrith and Skylar obviously on Roxai. Our fourth player was also on Roxai. So yeah, what do you like mean by that? How were the games over there? Was it just like you just seem to have the nuts all the time, or?
So I had some pretty good hands throughout the Swiss, and I kept a couple bad hands. So round one, I kept a turn one Necro. It was like a Culling the Weak, Arcane Signet, Necropotence, and this was in my first game against Marco actually, and I jammed and he force willed and he won.
Yeah. So he was P1 and I was P3, and I knew I had to give a free interaction, and I'm mulligan. I was lucky enough to find I think I was down to 6 or to 5 or something like that, so I didn't mulligan super hard. And yeah, I slammed down the Necro and I just force a will on turn 0 for me, but yeah, it was turn 1, 6, 1. So.
Yeah, a little bit brutal, but he had to have it.
Yeah. Marco, how did you feel coming into the tournament?
Oh yeah, I don't know. I wasn't sure. I was confidently playing Kenrith. I don't think Kenrith is an overpowered deck or anything. I think it's just a comfort zone. It's 100 good cards.
Mm-hmm.
If you mulligan properly, you can set up a game to win from that. But he has some very hard matchup against Turbo, especially if you have many Turbo players at the same table. So yeah, I had a ton of fun though, and I think, as the tournament was progressing, I was believing more and more in the deck and its potential, let's say.
That's good. That's good. Me going into the tournament, I was pretty confident. I know the last time I came out here and I top 4'd, so I was already fairly familiar with the players that were here, as well as the decks that I assumed I would be seeing. I didn't make much changes to Blue Farm since MH3, just because there wasn't anything that I thought was worthy of putting in. The only spell maybe is Strix Serenade, and I tested it out because I play Stella Lee just on my locals to wind down and mess around with another deck, and it was terrible. It didn't do anything. It was just I never had this counterspell to counter a commander or a dockside, and when I did have it, I was in the middle of a counter battle and it just sat in my hand. So it never felt good. So I knew, all right, well, I guess I'm just gonna come in with the same stuff. And once I got to the events, right away, the people that I knew, they're the locals, were just like, "Are you ready for Roxai Hell?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" There's at least 8 Roxais here that we all know, that we know of each other, plus any other people we don't know that are also on Roxai. And I was like, "Oh no." I haven't I don't know if the tournament is up on EDH top 16 yet, and hopefully the deck lists are unlocked so I can see how many there are. But just walking around of the people that I knew, I was scared because Oh man, because I already knew like at some point I'm probably gonna be in like double Rogsai and it's gonna just suck. And I was scared. I went from confident to just afraid of just getting dumpster turn 0 by a Rogsai. And luckily that didn't really happen.
I have to say, our group at CARDART on Wednesday is very Rockside heavy. Everybody's a turbo player. And I have nightmares of triple Rockside pods in which you put Ristic on turn 1 and you still lose the game. Like, an unwinnable game. So I was really, really ready. Like, that was my biggest fear is the double Rockside table. And that's why the last table, I was so scared and so focused. I tried to make sure that the table was aware what type of game we were playing, because otherwise we would have just like lost instantly. And thank God, actually, everybody was really receptive to that game, I think.
Okay. So I think we should quickly just kind of go over our games. I don't know if anyone will recall, but I do have the bracket up. So I'll go through and just pull up the games and you guys can let me know how it went. So I'll start off. In my first game, it was a Rogsai, me, my buddy Rupon on Najila, and another buddy of mine on Niv Mizzet. Right away, 3 of us were buds, so we were just like, hey, do you guys want to take a draw? And of course, the Rogsai player in first seat said no. So we're like, okay, man, like, we'll probably like not show interaction for either of us and just interact with you. And he was pretty confident that like, no, I think I can win it. And we're like, well, you're a Rogsai, so I don't blame you. So yeah, we'll play it out. So we proceed to start mulligan, and I have a really strong 6. The others have like, they don't seem like it was terrible, but they kept a good, I'm assuming they kept a good 5. And after I've seen the game, it was a pretty decent 5 that they kept. And Rogsai mulligan down to 3. And we offered him the draw again, and he still didn't want to do it. We started playing, got some development, except the Rogsai player, and I started dominating the table really fast with a bunch of engines. And then I think I had a Necropotence at one point, did like a value 6, and then went for it on the next turn. And like prior to that, my buddy tried to go for a win 2 with his own Necropotence, and I had to use like 2 forms of interaction to stop him. And Niv Mizzet was able to get out Niv Mizzet, so I don't know if I had enough interaction to go through it, but through the Niv Mizzet. But I was like showing win attempt, and we're like, hey, do you want to call it here? Because it's really going to be up to my bud here that's gonna, stop me or not. And he wanted to keep going, so I was like, all right, I'll just like set up again. I don't need to go for it here, just to make sure I can like win. Goes back to his turn. He top decks a tutor, plays his Dockside, which is one of the 3 that he kept, and tries to tutor for an Adnaz. And we're like, okay, bud, we have like 3 pieces of interaction just for me, and we got over here. And he's like, show me the interaction and we can draw. And I was like, show him the interaction. He's like, okay, we'll take an ID. And we're like, okay, bud, we just wasted 20 minutes here. We could have just went out and got to eat something. So we just spent the rest of the time just hanging out. But that's how my first round went. So yeah, could have gotten a win there if I had just one more piece of interaction, but it was my buds, so I just decided, yeah, we'll go for an ID, because I'd rather help out some buds, and I'm pretty confident I can just pick up wins somewhere else. Marco, for your pod 1, I see it was Skylar, Brian, you, and then a David. Do you remember who your first pod was?
I remember the game. I remember at the beginning a lot, and I remember how we ended, because at the beginning Skyler was going for the win on turn 1, and I had the Force of Will. They obviously,
right.
The interesting thing is that I had to Force of Will pitching an intuition. So I was actually, like my top in Skyler actually set me back a lot. But the good news is that seat number 2 was a stack player. So I knew I could rebuild from there much quicker and more efficiently than Skyler would have. And seat 4, they were playing a mono blue deck that I've never seen before. So my expectation is that they're gonna have a ton of counter spells and a very convoluted line that I can eventually stop somehow, but I didn't even know what it was. But the stack players, I think either place turn 1 or turn 2 deafening silence. And from there, I know with Kenry that I have the advantage. Because of course, if I can slam a Kenry down, I do nothing during my turn. Right? My turn is just putting down a rock, putting a heuristic study. My game revolves around interacting with other player on their turn and using Kenry last ability to gain a dockside or something like that. And actually what happened is that I had either through tutor or to natural draw, I don't remember. I had a heuristic study at some point. I had both dockside and field match. So if you're familiar with the combo, you need a dockside count equals to 8, which is super high to gain infinite mana. But because the stacks player was playing a ton of aura, and they were playing this commander that creates aura token. And so basically, what was the name, Skyler?
Elevere. It's the
Elevere.
Yeah.
rolls one.
Yeah. So I think I won that game because of Elevere, because Skyler had 2 rocks and the blue player had 0 rock. I literally won because they had 13 Elevere's token. And what happened is that the stack player would have won on their turn, and so the blue player decided to interact with them and forces Skyler to help them to interact with them. So they both cast a spell, and they do it under definite silence. So in that moment, in response, I just make infinite mana and win the game on top of that. Which was, it was just the right moment to strike, and it was a bit of luck, a bit of timing, and that's how the game went. Just Skyler wants to learn something about it.
Right. And other than that turn 1 blowout, Skyler, how were you feeling throughout that game?
I was feeling pretty out of it. So it was a turn 1 necro, but it was a 1-lander, and I think I whiffed on lands for maybe 4 turns or something. And while this is going on, Elevere's playing, deafening silence, stony silence to turn off my arcane signet. Then the Phyrexian sensor or whatever.
Yeah,
bro.
It's I think I'm just playing to a draw at this point. There's my only saving grace was Elevere was not attacking me because I was so out of it.
Right.
And at the end of the game, Marco and the other player were at I think 3 and 4 respectively. There was 30 trampling damage or something coming in. But Marco was played really sharply. He found his window. It was a little brutal, but it was a fun game.
Damn, yeah. That sound that I know once we were done and I was kind of glancing around, I was looking around and I saw the board stay at one point with Elevere and all this stuff out, and I was I'm glad I'm not there. And I was checking out with my other friends, so I didn't have time. I wanted to watch it just because it looked I'm looking at the field of Elevere just having this massive field. I look at Rogside, I'm Rogside's looking a little empty over there. That doesn't look too good for that guy. So and I just had to move on to some other tables. But yeah, I got a glimpse of it and saw how miserable it could have been to be participating in it, unless you're gonna win the game.
Yeah.
So moving on to round 2, Marco, since you're in the pod 1, it was you in first seat, Robin in second seat, Evan in third seat, and Tia in fourth seat. I'm actually familiar with Tia. I know she's on what was his name? The little dude that makes mana.
She was with Italian. She was on Thailand.
No, she was.
She's playing Italian.
Was she playing Italian? Oh.
Yeah. I mean, unless I zone out, and I was just imagining. I think
saw this game.
Yeah. She played. So she was on Italian. C3 was Corbold, and C2 was Ataxa.
Okay. I knew she used to play on another deck, so I didn't know she was on a different deck this tournament. But yeah, how did that game go?
Yeah, no, she played very well actually. The game ended with the 2 of us 1v1. So what happened is that I had something I think I had a Mystic on turn 2 through some tutor. So I keep the hand, and what happened is that Corvo was going very hard. But because it was 3 mid-range players, of course, the focus was on stopping Corvo. The thing with Corvo is that he was a bit unlucky because he had to sack a couple of his lands to start with Corvo. And so once you play Corvo, you sack a couple of land, it's super hard to rebuild to lose Corvo. So the Atraxa player tries going for it on something like turn 4. And so he played a Gundam Abolisher. So everybody knew that they had a winning hand. So for the next 2 turns, we tried to kill them. And eventually, Corvo killed them. Corvo, meanwhile, Italian player had Children. So that game was my favorite of the month because it was absolutely insane. I play a Gilded Drake early in the game that gets destroyed once on ETB, right?
Mhm.
So I had the Gilded Drake in the graveyard the whole game, but people forgot about it. So I played Kenrick, and so I had Kenrick, and I could have get the Gilded Drake at any moment. No one realized. Italian player has Children, which resolves, and basically Corvo dies because of Children. When Italian, when it goes to my turn, I get the Gilded Drake from the graveyard to cash Children, and then I paint the path for a Wheel of Fortune, and I just cast that with the Fortune, and that's I won the game. The game was insane. It was super
great.
long, and it was the last turn. So my turn was when we were on time. So and Corvo really wanted to draw, so he was trying to push the Italian player to draw. I just again, I think that was one of these games just had enough to push it through, even if everybody wanted to draw. And because the Atraxa player died very early, and it was a mid-range fight with the Gilded Drake, I just managed to win the game.
That sounds like a tasty win. Stealing a shoulder and then wheeling. Oh, that sounds fantastic. That
was nice.
That's a dream win right there, to be able to pull off something like that. Oh, that's great. Let's see. Next up in pod 4, it was my game, and this game I was pretty scared of just because in first seat and second seat were 2 Stella Lee decks. Third seat was the Stacks player, the Cephers player, and then me in last. So I'm like, great, I'm in front of 2 Turbo decks and a Stacks deck. Oh, I'm probably not gonna do anything this game. And luckily, the second Stella Lead player mulliganed pretty low, and the game went on pretty slow. Surprisingly, no one really did a lot of things turn 1, just kind of set up. Stella Leads came down on the second turn for the first seat Stella. Second seat Stella, he casted counterbalance turn 1, which was kind of weird, but I guess, I don't know, maybe the order doesn't matter. But I figured he wanted to get past Stella Lee first before the counterbalance. But he cast the counterbalance, and then he seemed to be mana screwed because he wasn't playing any lands after that. And then Cephas finally played a Rule of Law effect, which was great because I was hoping they'd have a Rule of Law effect or some way to stack out the game because I kept a very slow hand. And I think that was my best bet, I had some interaction to stop the Stella Lee players if they went for an early win, and then just let the Stacks player stacks the game. So they stacked the game out, and then we proceeded to go through quite a few turns of nothing happening, and the Stacks player starts to get ahead with a bunch of creatures out. They hard cast a Toxtril at one point to start board wiping. It was getting really crazy. I was gonna go for a win attempt because I had a removal for their Rule of Law effect, but the Stella Lee player right before played a Spellskite. So I'm like, oh, great.
Oh my god.
And I go to my turn to draw for turn, and I draw an Otawara, but I don't have enough mana to do an Otawara and a Swords at end step. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll just sit here and maybe one of the Stella Lees get impatient or finds their removal for the Rule of Law, and then I can try to do something to stop them, or maybe I don't know what I could do on top. Hopefully I draw a board and then maybe I could win on top. So we continue to go around. We're starting the Cephas player is starting to beat us up. And I start to take a lot of damage. and we get to a point where the Stella Elite player has to durdles a bit because at some point I removed the Spell Sky and I removed the Brutal Law effect and tried to go for a win, and then I got stopped by the Zephyrus player with this one card from Shadowmoor where you discard it and exile up to 2 cards from a graveyard, and he hit my LED.
Oh yeah.
And
It's in my card.
yeah,
It's in my card, but if it's going.
I'm looking at my hand of counter spells. I'm like, yeah, you got it, you got me. And just I was dead in the water, so I'm like, okay, now I have to rely on the Thassa combo. And so I just like passing, and then the Stella's like trying to durdle now that they're unlocked, and they can't get there, but they do find a Cyclonic Rift that they try to overload, and the Zephyrus player tries to show a counterspell, and currently I tapped out trying to go for a win, so I couldn't help him out with the counterspell, and that gets countered, so we're like, oh, that sucks. Goes to the second player, Stella Lee, and he is like, I'm really behind, and I don't think I can get through this, so I'm just gonna go for a Haymaker, and he shows like a Final Fortune. And we're like, okay. So he like Final Fortune, wheels, goes to his extra turn, durdles around a bit, makes a bunch of mana with the Jessica's Wheel, finds a gets a cantrip, finds a Cyclonic Rift, overloads Cyclonic Rift, just to hope that the game will go to a draw and so his death won't be in vain. And I'm like, you're wild, bro. But like if he found Brain Freeze, he could have like kept going a little bit more, and as long as he hit like a Lotus Petal, he probably could have won there. But yeah, he was just like that, and he pieced out. We go to Zephyrus player, they don't really do much, pass the turn, and I go and draw a Thassa, and I had a Consult in hand. So I'm like, okay, I could go for a win here, but through their whole battling with Zephyrus, I know the first seat Stella player showed me their hand, and they have win attempt, but they don't have Stella on board to go for it, and they're missing pieces for a breach combo. But I do know that they have one counterspell in hand that can stop me, and I'm all out of counterspells at this point when we get to the game. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to be extra devious this game. So I pass the turn, Stella does nothing. We go to Zephyrus' turn, and he starts to cast his leader to try to rebuild. The player asked me what he should do, and he's a new player, so we've been like, me and the other Stella player have been like helping him in his gameplay, trying to make him do more better plays, like hey, you want to do this, it's more efficient, play the hold this, don't do this right now. So we were genuinely helping him, just because like we were at one point both of us were out of the game, so we were like, you know what, we'll see if you win, or hopefully you can interact long enough that the game stalls out, which it did. The game ended at like 10 minutes, so it almost did go to time. So we were just trying to make sure we can get to a draw. So he asked me what he should do, and I told him, well, that's a really good counterspell you got in your hand. I didn't want to reveal the information to the Zephyrus. So I was telling him, you can counter that spell right now, or if you think you have another piece of removal you could find, you can save your counterspell and kill the Zephyrus, the leader. But on the next turn, he's gonna attack and kill me. I'm gonna be out of the game, and I won't be able to help you. I'll be out because I can't talk to you now that I'll be out of the game. So he thinks about it, and then he casts the counterspell countering it, and goes to his turn, sets up, goes to Zephyrus' turn. They have nothing, they pass. Go to my turn, and I just show Thassa combo, and nobody has anything to stop me, and I win.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was a little devious, but I'm like, I had it. I had to go for it. I told him too, like, you don't have to counter it if you have removal. And I have enough removal in my deck that like maybe I could survive a turn. Like if I needed to, I'll consultation for Angel's Grace or a sword. So like if it came down to it, I would have done that. I know I had a breach. I could have I had breach, I believe, in hand. So I could have like breach and then also like consultation, and hopefully it didn't hit Thassa on my first one. So I still had like a win attempt, but it definitely wasn't clean. So I'm glad I top decked Thassa, and then he was able to use his counter spell, and I was able to get the win.
I think sometimes it feels weird because the best suggestion you can give them is actually the one that benefits you the most, but it's also the best play, right? So it's not, I don't think it's devious to tell them, this is the situation you're in. You can choose what to do, but this needs to be stopped now. And I know that the piece of interaction you're gonna use could hurt me. still, this is the moment in which you have to use it. And that's, that's how the game goes. So I don't think he's devious in this situation. So
Right. It just felt bad because, like,
He does, though. It feels
felt bad at the
bad,
very
yeah.
end because, like, I was his ally almost the entire game, helping him out, coaching him through games, and then at the very end, I'm just like, I'm gonna win now. Sorry, bud. Thanks for your counter spell. So I felt a little bad, but yeah, like you said, I wasn't wrong in any of the stuff we said. All the things he had to counterspell, and Zephyrus just so happened to be too scary to not deal with. So that was just in my favor, especially when they stopped me really hard with that card to exile my LED. Like that put me like dead in the water. So that like came back to bite him because now that I was out of the game, I wasn't a threat, and we had 2 Storm players now unlocked because I got rid of the Rule of Laws. So
I just want to say, let's not forget this moment about making someone counter spell and feeling bad about it, because when we speak about the final game, I want to pick it up because there's a counter spell that Skyler had to use because of one of my misplay, I feel like. And I think like it was part of what made me win the game. But
we'll say that. We'll get to Skyler's Giga Chat counter spell later on.
That one. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So okay, in pod 2, Skyler, you got paired down pretty far down. Actually, you got paired all the way down to the last pod. I see it was Mark in seat 1, you in seat 2, Dustin in seat 3, and a Mateo in seat 4. What was that game?
This was a pretty crazy game. This was the triple Rogsai pod.
Oh, no.
Seat 1 Rogsai, me Rogsai, seat 3 was Blue Farm, and then we had a 4th Rogsai. So, going into this game, it was like, this game is not serious, man. This is kind of a joke game. And with that in mind, I looked down at my starting 7. It's Crypt, Grim Monolith, Culling the Weak, Ad Nauseum, Lair of Duplication, Thassa's Oracle, Tainted Pact.
What?
So it's a 0-lander with any black source getting me to a turn 1 Ad Naus and win. And looking at the table, it's like, I can't not keep this hand. This hand's too funny. And I don't really remember too much about how the game played out. I think the Blue Farm player tried to like tutor up an early win. On my first turn, I think I just brick, play out my rocks, and then I also play out Rogue Wreck, and I've got this Flare of Duplication, and the Blue Farm player plays an Imperial Seal. This is my first time ever playing Flare. I got it at the morning of the tournament. I was thinking I could maybe just go for the copy on the tutor, and I could grab a black land or something. But I ultimately decide against it. I think with 2 other Rog size, there's probably better targets. But he tutors, and I think he kept his first 7, so it was pretty clear he was doing powerful stuff. And then, and for some extra context, player 1, I think he mulled down to 3 or something. It was pretty brutal for him. But then it goes to player 3. I think he just or player 4. He goes land go or something. And then player back to the first player. I think he just went land grinding station, sack the grinding station to mill the Imperial Seal target. That was pretty cool for the rest of the table. That kind of saved us from I think it was a turn 2 win with backup. He said that after the game. And then it goes to my turn. I think I brick again. Blue Farm, I think he tutored for Mana Crypt, and he needed that mana, so I think he goes land go again. And then the 4th player, the Rogsai, he starts playing a bunch of rituals. He starts with a dark ritual, and so this is where I try to spring my flare, because I can now go for an Ad Naus on his turn in response and try to stop him. But I think he plays the counter spell for that, and then he plays a Necro, which the Blue Farm player ends up countering. So they're both really low in cards at this point, and the first player's always been low in cards. it gets back to the first player, he kind of land goes again. Then I draw my talisman. It's a black talisman, so I can just play Rogue or replay Rogue with my mana Crypt, play the talisman, play an ad naus, and it's just a pretty simple win from there. I did like some LED Yawgmoth's Will LED stuff,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah, it was a pretty fun game. We were like all joking the whole time because 3 frog sizes.
That's the meme pot right there.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. All right, well
it was a fun game.
That sounds. Oh God, I don't ever want to be in a double rockside pot again. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Triple rockside pot, I would hate to be that blue farm player in that pot. Jesus. Okay, let's go to round 3. So round 3, Marco, I see you got a draw with I see it was a Michael, Ryan, you, and Alex. What was that game like?
Yeah, that was I think my next 2 games I just focus on the draw because I understand the point that if I just draw, not only make the final, but there's a very good chance I just make first and second.
Right.
And that's true also for Ryan. So being in the same pod with Ryan it was very good there because it was 2 players that really wanted to draw. The pod was Nadu, Rossai, me, and then there was a TNT, which we started by saying, okay, both Nadu and Roxai can just like win on the spot, or basically, Nadu doesn't win on the spot, but he basically wins on the spot, right? He can just like
storm off.
every on call, storm off, and there is no way you can catch the game back after that, right? So we decided to try to at least slow down the game at the beginning. My mulligan was very terrible, and I stopped on 4 with a mana Crypt, 2 lands, and a 1 ring. So I realized that I can just slam a 1 ring on turn 2, hope that the stack players slow down the game, and then I can rebuild from there. The thing that happened though is that as I build my mana, I find a lot of rock-based mana as the game progresses a couple of turns, and the TNT player plays Stony Silence. And there was I know. There was what's it called? So there's a Shuko. Nadu player on turn 1 played a Shuko. So the Nadu is the scariest thing in the world. There's a Shuko down. We couldn't deal anything with it. And so the Stony Silence is there to stop the Shuko. I tried to and I had a mana drain, which I show to the empty player. I say, if you play that, you force me to counter it. And if I counter it, then I lose a counter against the 2 turbo players, and you lose your turn just playing the Stony Silence. So just don't do it. And they instead decide to just play it. That was one of my biggest misplays yesterday. I didn't counter it because I was so worried that Nadu would have just won the game. I think that was a bit of a misplay from the stack player because it put me in a situation in which I had to lock out myself from the game, or the Roxai or the Nadu would have won. What ended up happening is that now it was 3 people completely locked out the game. So the Nadu player, the Roxai player, and me, we were sure we wouldn't have won. And so we all tried to play for the draw. And the TNT player, I think, made the biggest, not misplay like not to play the game, but more like of a misjudgment of what was going on. So they cast a opposition agent, and then they cast Scheming Symmetry, targeting me and the Rockside player. So the Nadu player had a Cyclonic Crypt, and he said, I can just bounce your opposition agent and you lose the game. The Rockside player say, I have a defense grid. If you don't draw, what happens is that we both search, and either I win or the Kendrick player, which is me, of course, win. And so basically, he put himself, he was so ahead, and he put himself in a situation in which he had to draw, and so we drew the game because of that.
Oh,
So
nice.
I think
that sounds so bad. That must have felt so bad for the other players. Oh,
yeah, no,
man.
because he was so ahead. The thing though is like a lot of people like that combo. And it's very sketchy. You can literally lose the game with one piece of interaction, and everybody plays creature removal and bouncing spells, right? So you are literally one path to exile away to lose the game, and just to get a little bit ahead. So anyway, so that game wasn't my best play ever, I have to say, but you know, everybody makes mistakes, even the person that is ahead, and thankfully he ended up on a draw for me for that reason specifically.
All right, well that's good. That pretty much locked you in, honestly, for like the first seed, I believe. No, second seed, I think you were locked in at.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
clear.
Yeah. So going into my round 3, it was me finally in first seat. Kyle, which was playing a Grenzo deck, and I know this player. He's great, and his Grenzo deck, every time I played against him, his Grenzo deck has been stopped by some kind of like stacks piece. So I have yet to see Grenzo do anything, and I was excited to hopefully see him do something with it. C3 was the Atraxa player, and then C4 was Italian player. Right away, it's pretty standard game. No one's got anything too crazy. Everyone's just doing like standard building of their boards. And the table right away starts interacting with me with countering my spells to try to set up for wins. They didn't look any scary. I didn't have anything particularly threatening. It was just like slowly like, here, I'll cast an Imp Seal, or I'll cast something else to like start setting up. And they just start like completely like hitting me and getting rid of my stuff, removing and countering myself. So like they like put me out of the game pretty early on. So I'm just sitting there watching the game play out as the Atraxa player and the Italian player start to get ahead. Atraxa plays his leader out, gets a bunch of cards. They have a really good board. Italian shows a Gilded Drake, steals the Atraxa, and then they start building up their board. And then they start playing stacks pieces to turn off Grenzo with like Cursed Totem. And Grenzo had some pieces for a combo, I would assume. Like they had the Mad Red Cap, the one that has persist, deals 2 damage to any target. So I'm like, okay, I'm assuming that's some kind of infinite loop. And then he had like a Cloudstone Curio like the turn before, but nothing to loop it with or start the loop. So I'm like, okay, you're one dock set away from, I assume, winning here with your red cap. So everyone has like some kind of like win that they kind of have. And Italians come out and they're like 2 Italians at 2. So I'm like, I can't even do anything if I want to, because I'm going to be taking 4 damage for every spell. So I can't even do anything. I'm just sitting back. I don't have enough life to do anything. I'm getting attacked. I'm getting smacked by the Atraxa. And I just literally sit there and wait to die. And sure enough, Atraxa kills me. Atraxa then dies to combat damage as well from the Italian player. And then it's finally down to a 1v1 with the Italian player and the Grenzo player. And they both misplay pretty severely. Italian has a Hullbreaker Horde that he gets out at one point, and he shows infinite mana, but doesn't seem to have an outlet for it, and then just like tries to swing at Grenzo, but leaves some up just because like he knows the Madcap can like either block, come back, attack, and then like maybe sack it to something. So he's like scared of it being recurred. So he's like leaving up some blockers and attacking him, and passes a turn. And I'm just like looking at this game shook because he had a 1 ring out. So he could have made infinite mana, blinked the 1 ring, drew his deck, and then Facet or Bowmaster. And I guess he didn't see it and he passed. I'm like, oh no, that's terrible. Goes to Grenzo. He's a final turn now, and he has a Cloudstone Curio, he has the Dockside, and he has a Madcap. And the Talon's on 2, and he's like at 16 life or something, so it's really low, so he can't go for the infinite. He proceeds to sequence wrong, trying to make mana positive with Dockside first instead of bouncing the Madcap, killing the Italian, and then showing infinite, because the Italian had counter spells, but none of them were for creatures. So he messed up his sequencing, got down to 2 low health to go for the combo, and he has to pass, and it goes to a draw.
Oh my lord.
And
it was similar to my game, huh? Like if you drop because your opponent just like Makes
Yeah,
mistake. Yeah,
so-
it happens.
I was just like, what just happened? There's no way I just got a draw. I look over to the Jackson player and I'm like, hey, the game went to a draw. And he looked confused, like, what? Like, yeah, we drew. And he's like, great. And I'm like, yeah, I'm happy too. So that's how that game ended, which was definitely not how it should have gone, but we take those. And Skylar, so in your pod in round 3, I see you're in pod 4. Looks like you got paired up really high from your pod 11. So I see we have Tia in seat 1, Aravi in seat 2, Charles in seat 3, and then you in seat 4. How was that game?
This game was pretty interesting. So we've got seat 1 Talion, seat 2 Kinnan, which is a deck that I'm never happy to play against, and then seat 3 Orfold or something. I don't know. I don't think they were very relevant that game. But Talion drops a turn 1 fish, kind of the dream start. I keep a hand that's also a turn 1 fish and like pretty much nothing else. But then Kinnan goes, feeds the fish a bit, plays a turn 1 Kinnan. Scary stuff as usual. I don't remember like a single thing C3 did all game, but they were probably doing stuff. I just can't remember. Then I drop my fish. Talion like keeps the fish, or I think they keep the fish around this time. Kinnan goes crazy. They like get up to 7 mana, and then they flip a Nezahal on the next player's turn, and that was pretty brutal. I'm gonna be the one taking 7 damage most of the time, and he's drawing a billion cards, got all the mana in the world. I was very scared, but I'm like drawing some cards here and there, and I go back to my turn, pay for the fish, drop a land, pass. Then the Talion player lets their fish go, and maybe like rock Talion, and they have Talion on too, of course. Then the Kinnan player, they have a pretty scary turn. So I think they drop they go for, I think they play a green Sun Zenith for 5, trying to get their Seedborn Muse, which would pretty much win the game, and it resolves. We don't have anything for it. I've got a Mindbreak Trap. I think I kind of reveal this. I'm like asking like what's happened this turn, and he was like like Mindbreak Trap is not active right now, but he does that. And I'm scared, and then he plays. I think there's a rock somewhere in there, and then he goes for I think some clone Fimage, something to that nature, to try to clone the Talion. And I'm like trying to like visualize myself thinking about Mindbreak Trapping this, and he's like, don't Mindbreak Trap it, don't Mindbreak Trap it. And I'm like, okay, I won't Mindbreak Trap it if you don't attack me with Nezi this turn. And I've drawn some cards at this point, and some of the cards in my hand are Pulling the Weak, Simian Spirit Guide, and Ad Nauseam. So I've got like an instant speed Ad Nauseam that's super disguised because I only have 1 mana, and Rogue Rack. And he's like, sure, and he plays the Talion on 1, and then he goes to end step. I cast my Ad Naus, and I think it just gets through. Like, he's spent all his mana for the turn, but he's got a big hand and a Seedborn Music. And then it goes to the next turn, or then I Ad Naus, and I get greedy. I had a little too much tunnel vision at this point, and I put myself down to like 5 life, and I forgot that there was. I remembered 1 Talion. I forgot about the new Talion, and then there was also a Deathrite Shaman in play from the 3rd player. So that's 6 damage there, and I'm like, oh my god, I just punted this game, and everyone's like kind of agreeing. And then it goes to the, I think, Corvold player, and he's like thinking about, like, he's like, do I go for it? And then Kinnan's like, if you go for it, then I have to spend my interaction on you, and this guy just played an Adnos, and even though he's at 5 life and we've got a bunch of stuff out, I can't help stop him. So eventually, Corville player just passes to me, and I'm thinking real hard about how to get through there, and luckily I've got I have a Pyroblast and a Chain of Vapor, and so I go for the Pyroblast. I fight over it. I Pyroblast the Italian on 1, of course, and that puts me down to 3 life. And I fight over it. I think I throw out a Pact, and that one gets through. And then I go for a Chain of Vapor on the Italian on 2 because every single win in the deck has a 2-drop in it, and so I go for that. And this one gets countered. Mindbreak Trap's not on still, and I'm feeling pretty hopeless at this point. I had it's also off my ad nauseum. I drew 0 lands that did no damage to me that produced colored mana. So all I had was like a Phyrexian Tower, and so I played that earlier, and I used that. So now I just have like 1 red up. And I'm thinking hard about how do I get out of this situation? What are my outs? And I also I don't want to Kingmake, because if I'm casting all these spells and there's a Nezahal out with this this giant Kinnan, if I go for it and I can't get there, then I just threw the game to Kinnan, and that sucks for the rest of the game. So I'm trying to find some way to maybe win, and I see one line. I know that I have a Deadly Rollick in my deck, and even though Roguerak's in the command zone because I stacked him to Pulling the Weak, I have enough mana to cast the backside of Bird. I can tap out, and that's my last spell. And so I cast it, and we fight over this pretty hard. I think I actually. Maybe this one just gets through. I think we fight over something else later, but it gets through, and I discard a card. I think off my second hit, I find the Deadly Rollick, and then off my 3rd or 4th, I just find my Mono Crypt. So I play the Mono Crypt, play Roguerak, things are good. I cast the Rollick, and I think this is where we fight. And he tries to play a counter spell, and at this point, if this gets countered, I literally lose. And he has, he's Seedboard Muse, so he has all this mana untapped. And so I'm trying to hold this Mindbreak Trap because I feel like he has a Flusterstorm. So I'm discarding damn near my whole hand to this 4 and trying to find something. And eventually I do, and it gets through. And then the Italian's gone, and so I just need to not lose a single life. And I keep on discarding, find 3 rocks, play a Breach, fight over the Breach, and then just a Breach win from there. So that was a very stressful game. I really thought I threw it, but some deck knowledge came through there, and yeah.
I have to say the respect to keeping yourself to feed the Nazahol player. I think a lot of games that you end up losing, or you see the turbo players throwing, is because they need to go for it. Instead, they could wait a couple of turns and then recuperate as you did and then win. But I feel there's so many games I lost just because a fish or a 6-study wasn't respected, and they were trying to go to a win that they didn't have. You know what I mean? And then, as you say, yeah. So well done, well done on that for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, so I think we're all looking pretty hot. Even with all my draws, I'm feeling pretty confident. And then we're getting into round 4, and it's a Tali player in my pod. It's a Tali player in seat 1, my buddy Brian in seat 2 on Tivit, Marco over here in seat 3, and me in seat 4. I don't know how much do you want to go into this game, Marco, because it was relatively fast.
I think it was, but I think if anybody should speak about this game as you, I can just jump in when I did my one play.
Right.
And if you want to discuss it, but I'm happy to discuss it or not. I think, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So Obviously, us three, me, you, and Brian, we want to draw it out just to be able to get into a secure top 10. And the Atali player in seat 1 is worried that they're not going to bubble in. We sit there for, I think, like 5-10 minutes trying to work out the math. And we're like going through, we're like asking Skylar, you and your first pod, we're like, you guys join? And at some point you guys said yes. And then like we kept trying to do the math. We turned back and then you guys were playing the game. And we're like, wait, what? And so we went back and we were like thinking of doing the math. And I think we started the game and we turned around and then you guys ID'd. So we're like, what happened? You guys kind of debated us, not gonna lie. But yeah, we were working out the math and I'm telling the guy in seat 1, because he was like at 6 points, I believe. And I was like, yeah, dude, with us here and Marco being in seat 2 and Brian being, I think he was like seed 4 and I was like seed 6 or something. I'm like, we should get here, like, or you should be able to get there purely off of opponent win percentage if we're doing our math right. As we're like going through our back the games, we're trying to like math it out. And we're like, yeah, dude, like you got it here. Me and my buddy Brian, like we're going through it and we both agree. I know Marco, you're not too aware of like tournament math.
I wasn't commenting because I didn't know. I was like, yeah, I'm sure I got it, but I don't wanna be bad.
Right. So I was like, me and my buddy Brian, we were like, hey, bro, we're like, we are sure that you get this in. And he is like thinking about it. He's like, I think he said he wanted to see his first hand for before he decided anything. So he wanted to play it out. So we're like, okay, we'll play it out. I mulligan down to 5, but it is a hot 5. It is like a turn 1 Ristic with a counter spell and man, I forgot what it was. I think like a tutor or something. So I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. This is a great hand. I'm keeping this. And I don't know, you mulligan pretty low, I believe, Marco, trying to find interaction to make sure this game goes to a draw, right?
Yeah, I think I rolled to 4 because the only thing I wanted to do was my plan there was Italy's gonna try to win turn 1 and 2. We just have to stop the first 2 turns and then we can convince them to draw. So I wasn't planning to have a game that lasted more than 3 turns, right? So right. I moved down to 4 and I found, I think, 1 interaction. Yeah, I found 1 interaction I had.
Right. So then we get into the game and he looks at his hand and he mulligans down pretty low, I think to like 5. And
they went to 4. They went to 4.
Okay. They went down to 4.
They went to 4, yeah.
And they liked their 4. So I'm like, ooh, this seems pretty good. Because he like looked at it and then right away started picking the 4. So I'm like, okay, he found gas. So I think I asked him again, like, do you want to draw? And he was like, no, let's play it out. Like, all right. So he sets up some mana. We turn around, play some stuff out. I get my troll and heuristic. It goes to his turn. And then he proceeds to rip it. He goes for it, gets the Atali out, and he is feeding me a lot of cards. And at this point, I draw no counter spells, but just all the tutors, all the win attempts. They're all in my hand with like no backup. And I'm like, well, this is a little awkward. So I can't really stop him, but I do have a swords. So I'm like, I can stop him there. He seems to be a little on the fence as he's going for it because he's like trying to pay for some Ristic triggers. And when he finally gets to the end of his line, he realizes he doesn't have enough mana to keep going. And if he didn't pay for any Ristic studies, he could have kept going. And I think he could have recast Atali again, hardcast it, even with the command attacks, and keep going. So at the end of it, he was like, okay, I don't got anything. And he, with his first Atali rip, he managed to steal a fish from me. He's like, I'm still in a decent spot. I want to keep playing this game. So we go past the turn, people do their stuff, goes to my turn, and I just unleash a disgusting board of just playing everything out. I start like going for I believe it was a breach win, and I'm like, I'm going for the win here. And then Marco's like, I have a force of negation that I have here.
You cast a necropotence, like you cast the necropotence. Yeah, okay. Sorry. And yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you, but yeah, you cast necropotence. And I had a smothering tie and exactly 3 treasures because I didn't have actually a card to pitch. So I show it to Luis and I show it to the Italy player and I say, can we draw? Because I just want to draw. And I say to Luis, if you don't cast a necropotence and you win, you got to call it a draw. And Yeah, so you can finish your turn.
Yeah, so I was just like, you want to draw here? Because I didn't have any counter spells, so I couldn't like even oppose Marco with a single counter spell. I just had win attempts in my hand. So I'm like, you want to draw? He's like, no, I want to keep going. I want to keep going. So like, okay. So I was like, all right, if I show win attempt, you know, we're gonna go for a draw. So he doesn't counter it. We start going through. I start necroing and going for it. Still find no counter spells. And finally I did find one counter spell. No, I don't believe I found any counter spells. So I finally go through my deck and I'm just like, you know, doing the necro line with Born and whatever. And I'm like, you know, I think I finally have to show a GA. And I was like, okay, I got win. I have a GA. Do you want to draw? And he finally decides to, yes, we'll draw it out. So we're like, okay, great. So we draw it out and then we like, yeah, I think like in the middle of like Atali going through his blood, that's when like we look back to Skylar's spot and we're like, oh yeah, we drew, and we were just like, what? So Skylar, what happened?
Okay, so we started with so our pod is someone on 10, I'm on 10, Ryan's on 11, and then we have someone on 7, and so we're all trying to do the math or whatever, because none of us are really good at this, drawing and opponent win percentage stuff. So we're like, I think if we draw, we're all good, and I think at one point or another, every single person wants to draw, but it never like happens at the same time. And then at some point, Ryan realizes that since he's got 11 points, drawing kind of doesn't do too much for him. But if he gets the win, he like locks himself for the top 2, so he would get a skip a game. So then eventually he decides he wants to play it out. So we end up doing that, and I don't really remember much about the game. I know like I've got some rocks, and the game ultimately like ends with Ryan. He casts a Jessica's Will. Ryan's on Rock's side, and he casts a Jessica's Will, and he finds a Wheel of Misfortune, and us Rogs, we love wheels, and so he decides to just like start with a Final Fortune, and then he goes for the Wheel of Misfortune, and this is like his first tournament on the deck, so he's not he's a great player, but he hasn't like learned like the ins and outs of every card. And so with the Wheel of Misfortune, he names 10, and Niv Mizzet names 28, Corvold names 23, I name 18, and so he does not wheel himself. He goes to his extra turn and he dies. And so at this point,
oh yeah, he told me that, yeah.
And then the Niv Mizzet player, I think he kept a 0-lander, like it was like a Lotus Petal Mystic Remora, and I countered his Mystic Remora, so he had like 0 permanents. He was doing nothing all game. I think he said he was keeping a bluff. He was bluffing free counter spells the whole game that he didn't have.
Nice.
But after the wheel, he's like, okay, now I've got stuff. And with my new hand, I'm looking at like, I've got a Yogg's Will, I've got like a little bit of like maybe a defense grid or something. And looking at my yard, I see like a Tutor and a Dockside, and I'm like, okay, this is great. And then I realize their Dockside count is 0. No one's got any rocks or anything. And I don't have the mana to go for a win. And like, he's like, I have 4 counter spells in my hand, and I'm like, we go back and forth for a little bit, but I'm like, okay, fine. If you show me 4 counter spells, I will accept a draw. And the Corvold player is asking for a draw as well. So he shows them to me. I'm like, okay, I don't care this much. Let's just end it. I want to take a nap or something.
Jesus, yeah, that was hilarious. Everyone's like, oh yeah, we're drawing. I'm like, okay. And then you guys like, no, we're playing it out. I'm like, oh, well, that sucks. Okay, now I guess we're playing it. And then we're like, maybe like 4 game actions in Atali's turn 2, and we turn around and I see everyone getting up from the table. I'm like, what? Oh my god! It probably would, because I think that the Atali player would have drew if you guys like definitively drew pretty early and like weren't going back and forth on it. So, but yeah, so whatever. So that's all those the final round 4s, and then me and Skylar are locked in top 10. We got to battle it out in our own respective pods, and Marco gets a free pass into top 4 as seed 2.
I just want to say, I'm not going to, obviously, I didn't play those games, so I got nothing to say except one thing. I see two pods. I see one pod that was fully mid range, which it was obviously Louis' pod, and there was one with Skylar being the only Rockside player. And I was there being like, please, let not the Rockside player win, with all respect to Skylar, of course, because the double Rockside pod, I was just like, I can't do anything but that. And I mean, no spoiler, but Skylar like wins like a freaking turn 2 or something like that. So I was like, oh my lord, I needed your pod to be one of the good, like, your pod needed to be someone that knew how to play a double or side player, otherwise I would have lost, you know what I mean? Yeah, so it was a bit of a, anyway, yeah. I was that scared and be like, oh my god, but yeah, please carry on you.
Yeah, with that said, Skylar, I definitely want you to talk about your pod right away since you're technically in pod 1. So I see Evan in seat 1, Kyle in seat 2, you in seat 3, and Anthony, the Nimiza player, in seat 4, which I believe he was the only non-Rockside player, and the rest of you were all Rockside players, right?
I think I was in this pod. I think I was the only Rogsai actually.
Oh, I thought this pod was.
Yeah.
I think this was so Evan seat 1. He's the Corvold player. So this pod is actually like pretty much my last game, except Ryan swapped with Kyle. So Kyle's the Grenzo player. So it's
yes.
Can you give me the turn order again?
It was Evan, I believe, Corvold, Kyle. I know he's on Grenzo. Yes, I just remembered. You on C3, and then Nivmiz in C4.
Yes. This game was pretty weird. I think half of it was spent like on politics. I think I jam a. Oh, okay. I had a pretty interesting keep. So all 3 of the other players, I think they keep their first 7, or they're all on 7 cards. So I'm really scared because I'm down to 5, and I see my 5 is Monocrypt, Ristic Study, Gitaxian Probe, and like 2 blanks or something. So it's another no-lander, but I'm Rockside, so I got to keep no-landers. I love the no-landers, and I've got a Gitaxian Probe. I've got 2 draws for a land, and so it gets to me, and luckily I just find my land and I probe the Niv Mizzet player, and he's got a turn 2 Niv Mizzet with no interaction. So he's the only other blue player at the table. So I'm like, I'm really excited. I slam my Ristic Study, pass it to him. He plays out. He plays into my Ristic pretty heavily, I think. I draw like a good amount of cards, and then it gets to Corvold, and he plays a Dockside for 5, and then he's thinking about casting Culling the Weak. And so actually, the Niv Mizzet player, he had 1 counterspell, which was a Disrupting Shoal, and his only other blue card in hand was a 1-drop. So he could counter the Culling the Weak, but like kind of he couldn't touch me at all, really. So they spent like, it felt like 10, 15, 20 minutes or something talking about whether to go for it, because I've got a Ristic Study, so I'd be drawing a bunch of cards. And Evan's like, I've got this win attempt here. I think I want to go for it. But ultimately, I think Niv Mizzet like offers him like 2 or 3 turns of like complete invulnerability, and then Corvold like, he like painstakingly, he's like, okay, and he passes the turn. And then like Grenzo does Grenzo things. I don't know, he plays the commander or something. He didn't really have much of a game. As sad as it is, I do want to see like what that deck does. But it gets back to me. I've drawn a bunch of cards, and among them I have a Wishclaw Talisman, a Soul Ring, and a Necropotence. And so I play a land, I play Soul Ring, and Anthony's thinking about Niv Mizzet player's thinking about countering it with his Disrupting Shoal, and like I'm kind of laughing at this idea because it's the Soul Ring, and so eventually he lets it go, and I play my Wishclaw Talisman, I grab a Dockside, and I get 5 mana off my Dockside. I play the Necropotence, a 30-something life, find Born Upon a Wind, and let's win off that.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And that was your turn 3?
That was
It's pretty
my
fast.
second turn.
Oh,
Yeah,
it was your turn 2. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That was that's Rockstar, yeah. Damn.
Oh yeah.
It sounded
Well
like the
done.
game was more turns, and because it was going on for quite a bit, and then finally when you guys were done, you're like, oh yeah, that was turn 2, and we're like, Jesus, we're like halfway into our game. What do you mean that was turn 2? That took so long. And now that you're telling me about the politics, I can see why it took so long. Jesus. All right, so now you're locked in for the finals pod, and in my pod it was exactly what people think of when they hear mid-range hell. It was my buddy in seat 1 on Tivit. We had I believe it was Tally in seat 2, Atraxa in seat 3, and then me in seat 4. So this was the Italian and Atraxa player that was in another pod previously. So they both made it all the way up here, and I got paired up with them again. So now I'm just like, great. I've been going like 4th so many times this tournament, and now I'm like with pretty powerful mid-range decks in front of me right now, and I'm like, oh man, this is not good, because I know Tivit is, my buddy's really good on Tivit, and I know Talon is like basically full control, and just me being at last, I'm like, oh no, this is terrible. And sure enough, that's what happens. My buddy shows a fish turn 1, and Talion shows a mental misstep on it, and then my buddy shows his mental misstep on it, and he's just like, listen, I have a mental misstep. Don't misstep. Let's hold it up for like something actually scary or whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, man, we should like, it's a misstep. It's a free, like, it's pretty free. Like, there's not a lot of 1-drops that you usually counter other than like an Imseal, like, or a top deck tutor. Like, I think it's pretty good. And my buddy's like, he seems to be getting through to him of like trying to save it up. And then I have to just dead look the Italian player in the face, and now like with a dead face, I'm just like, if you don't counter that spell, I'm gonna cast all my rocks and I'm gonna draw my entire hand. And he just like, he looks at me, he looks at his card, and then it's like, misstep. And then my buddy's like, guy, misstep back. And he keeps his fish, goes to Italian's turn. He plays his, like, he doesn't do anything. I think he just plays land, passes. I think he plays 1 rock actually, feeds it once. Goes to Atrax's turn, he plays a dork, and I go to my turn with a big grin on my face, and I just show my fish. Now that I know 2 missteps are gone, and I'm like, yes. And then I proceed to pass the turn, and then my buddy's like, where's all the rocks? I'm like, I don't need them, I got the fish. I had no rocks in hand.
Beautiful.
So we proceed to kind of do nothing for a while. Talion feeds us a bit because he goes like land, tutor for Crypt, and then Talion on 2, and that's all he does. And then Atraxas just playing creatures, and we go, our fishes tick up to 5, and no one is doing much of anything and not progressing the board state because nobody wants to feed the fishes unless they're creatures. So we go to 5 before all the fishes go away, and then the game just starts unloading with just a bunch of rocks, engines, we're getting things set up, and like Atraxa copies Talion, putting it on 2. Tivit gets a copy of Talion, putting it on 1. And we get to a point where we're in like a hard stalemate, and I'm not doing anything because every spell is gonna just deal so much damage to me. I'm looking at 3 Tivits. People want to attack, but they're scared of like opening themselves up for the crackback. Because like I have enough mana that I can just cast, if I really want to, cast Crom and just start attacking. And it was just looking like a disgusting game. We're going around, people are trying to show win attempts, like, oh, I'll cast a silence. We battle it out a little bit, like 1 counter spell, 2 counter spell, and then they stop, let it go, and it gets countered. Someone else is like showing another piece or something that like could lead up to a combo, and that kind of gets countered with like 2 spells. Everyone's being real conservative, and like I know the TO is looking at this and he's like, oh no. And he comes up and he posts up at this table. He's like, I'm pretty sure we're gonna be here for a while, so I'm just gonna be sitting here. And we were all expecting it to be at least like 3 hours. And Theo Ori, he was like, at 1 hour, I'm gonna be hard enforcing slow play, just so you guys know. And we're like, We get it. And yeah, so we finally get to a stalemate. Nobody is casting spells. Nobody's doing anything for like 2 turns. Everyone's just looking at each other, not doing nothing. And at this point, I'm like, okay, well, I gotta do something, because at this point, like, they're gonna draw creatures to start progressing the board state, and I can't without taking this much damage. So at the end step of the Atraxas player, I show a mystical tutor, taking 2 damage from the Talion, put a deluge on top, and I'm gonna go to show my deluge. And Atraxa was able to slam a Draenith at one point, and the other 2 players were kind of scared about unlocking Tivit. And I had to tell them, like, hey, you guys have 3 Talions. You guys have put me in this position. I'm gonna have to unlock them because you guys decided to lock me out the game. So this is where we're at. Deluge, feel free to fight about it. It's probably gonna resolve because the Tivit's gonna want to resolve. So I'm sure he'll show his counter spells. And the table, the other Atraxa and Talion are just like, they're not happy about it, and they pass priority on it. Board gets wiped completely. We all have a hard reset. I set up some stuff finally, now that I won't die for playing my hand. Go to Tivit, sets up some stuff, cast Tivit, Talion recast Talion, sets up, Atraxa sets up some stuff. Go to my turn, hold up interaction, go around. Tivit tries to show a win attempt. That gets battled over, countered. Talion tries to show something. I think they were like a tutor. That kind of gets countered. We go back to Atraxa, and they try to show a win attempt as well, and that gets countered. And I think we go around doing nothing, all scared, and I'm like trying to set up a win, and also just because I want to make sure there's enough counter spells kind of locked out. Atraxa tries to go for another win again, and I show a opposition agent to steal his win attempt, and the other players are like, oh, we don't want to let you have this because you're just gonna get like a win attempt from him. Like, hey man, it's getting a creature, and I think he was like off of an evasion or something. I'm like, it's gonna get a 4-cost creature. Like, the only thing I could get is like, a kitten or something. But if you guys let this resolve, like, I could just take his Miss Hollow, and I'm just gonna leave it in the exile, and like that's it. Like, that's all I'll do. And then you guys can worry about it later if you guys want to remove the Oppo agent. But we need to stop it here. And they decide to stop it, and then the Atraxa player shows a removal on it, I believe, and then it gets stopped. If we battle over it and it gets stopped, goes to my turn, and I believe I did some kind of tutor. The other players didn't want me to tutor it, and I tell them, hey, I'm gonna get something that's gonna deal with Tivit, because Tivit is already showing a lot of resources. I'm pretty low on resources. I think I had like 5 cards in hand or 4 cards in hand. So I'm like, I'm gonna get something that's gonna deal with Tivit. You guys need to just, you guys have your counter spells in it. I know you do. Let me get the Tivit out, and we can help. I'll be able to at least be in a state to fight back or help out. And they finally decide to let it go through. So like, cool. I believe there's a Wish Claw, and I give it to the Atraxa player, I think. So I go tutor, and I find and cast a Dockside, and I make like 11 mana or something, and I'm just like, okay. I passed the turn just because I wanted to have even more mana just in case for my turn. So we go around. Tivit tries to show another win. We stop him. Talion has nothing. I think the Atraxa player tries to do some other win attempt, and that gets stopped. Finally goes back to my turn, and I start to cast some stuff to bait out their counter spells. Like, I think it was a silence. I don't know, I think a GA, I believe, whatever. But I got enough stuff out of the way, and I was like low enough from like Talion where I was like, okay, I'm just gonna cast this Angel's Grace on top of some triggers just so I don't die to some damage, and then I'm gonna show an ad nauseum. And the table was like, they don't have anything, and they're like, he's not under a silence effect. We still have counter spells. I think we let this go through. Oh god, I forgot. Right before I went for that, right before we went to that, I Tainted Pact at the end of the Atraxa's turn to try to find like a GA or silence effect. I exiled half of my library before I found a silence, but I didn't see any counter spells in that pile, and I didn't see FASA or Consultation. So I put the silence in hand, I go to my turn, and I do the play that I said, and they're just like, hey, he's out of a lot of cards. I think we're okay letting this Adnos resolve, and hopefully it gets back to our turn and we can kill him like on the stack, or because they had a lot of counter spells. So I was like, okay, and they were just like thinking about it. And they're like, okay, I think we let it resolve because he's not under silence. He still has to show stuff, and we still need a counter stuff. He doesn't have a lot of free rocks, so it's gonna be really hard on him mana wise. And I know my buddy had a Flusterstorm, and I believe the other players had like other like niche interaction for me. So they were just like, I think we let this resolve. I'm like, okay, Adnos resolves. I pick up the remaining like 30 cards in my deck. I go through them, and there is just enough free mana rocks for me to go for my win and have enough mana to hold up interaction and with like my leftover rocks from my dock side. So sure enough, I show the win, and they show me like three counterspells from like each player, and I proceed to show them like 7 counterspells. And they were just like, what? And I'm just like, yeah, look at the pile. None of my counterspells are in that pile I exiled. I had a Deflecting Swat, a Pact of Negation, Red Blast, Mental Misstep, Flusterstorm, Mindbreak Trap. And I was just like, yeah, you're not stopping me. And they kind of misplayed too, because they should have, like, before anything, they maybe should have tried to crack their Cephalid Coliseum on themselves to try to like draw more stuff before my Adnos resolve. And they were also like, I think the Italian player might have forgotten about it, but my buddy didn't forget about it, and he was hoping that like I would show like that's on the stack, force me to draw. But that's not what I was going for. I was going for a Angel's Grace Nauseum, and then if I still had enough stuff that I can mill everybody out and then just like draw them out, it would have been really tight. But I just rather went for the Thassa because I was under Angel's Grace. I was safe. So sure enough, I show them all the counter spells, and then just the Oracle Consultation, or I just Thassa because I didn't have a library, and then sure enough, I just win the game. And yeah, it was a crazy game. I was locked out hard for like 30 minutes of that game from all the Italians, but I managed to just be patient and get there at the very end.
Wow.
Yeah, good game. I was watching, and that was a very hard game to win, so good job.
Yeah, it was, oh my god, probably the most difficult game. But with that said, we are now moving on to our top 4. So
Which I have to say, compared to all this game, was a little bit uneventful, unfortunately.
right, it kind of was surprising with all like my last game of it, just like insane games, spoilers, like just hilarious, like turn 2 win. I feel so bad, the other like non-blue players. Yeah, comparatively to all our other games, yeah, pretty uneventful. But Marco, I'm sure we were both feeling the same way of being just scared and a little defeated getting into a double Rockside pod, right?
I looked at you, and so I'm glad we played the other game with Italy and we got to know each other a little bit.
Yes.
So we could try. Like I trusted you enough to understand, and I think you did too as well to me.
Yes.
To understand that we were allied and we understood what we needed to do at the point. And I think like that calmed me down a little bit, because the day you lose the only way to win against double Rockside is to have an understanding with the other mid-range player on how to play the game.
For sure.
And I think I think that's why that game went that way. Partially, I think. I also think that actually Skylar played very well as a turbo player, because if the game started, of course, with Ryan playing a fish on turn 1, sit 1 with 7 in hand. Like one of the only other best opener from there would have been an Adnos turn 1 or Necropotent this one, right?
Yeah.
And like Skylar could, like the other Rockside player could have simply just like slam it down, and if they did, they would have given the win to Ryan basically. But Skylar was super patient in doing that, and actually I have to say that, I mean, we should go through the game. So I'm sorry if I'm skipping ahead, but I think when Ryan slammed the win, when I had the fish out, I think that was the moment that I win the game, basically.
Right. We'll get to that. So, Skylar.
But sorry,
How did you feel coming into this pod?
I was very excited. I mean, so I think this was my first time ever playing with you, but like, I'd like played with Marco and Ryan before, and they're pretty fun to play with, Marco especially. And
thank you.
I love my double Rockside pods, especially he was in seat 1, and then Marco's in seat 2, and I'm in seat 3. And so I was, going into this, I know that we're mulling to interaction, and then like, obviously the dream is seat one wrong side, but the problem with that is you bear all the initial interaction. So I'm thinking like Ryan's gonna like take a bunch of this all these counter spells for me, and then maybe that can like let me present a win like uninteracted. And Ryan also he's in first seat and he keeps his first 7, which is like the scariest thing he could possibly do. He looked really happy about it, and he was like, okay, this is either turn 1 fish or turn 1 Nas, and we've got to like assume it's a turn 1 Nas or something, because he was real happy.
Yeah, he was beaming. He like looked at his 7, slammed it. He was like, I'm keeping. Like kept. He went over to Ori, the TO, and he was like, look at this. Like he was just like excited. He's like he was really cocky about it too. He was like, you guys are not winning this game. And I was like, oh, I believe you. You kept the snap 7, and you're over here like jumping all over the place. Like I believe you.
Actually, I have a question for Skyler here, because I was wondering, as a rockside player, if you are on seat 1, do you keep fish on the first 7, or do you try to go for a Nose? Because a Nose on turn 1 wins you the game, right? A fish on turn 1 against 2 mid-range deck seems like much less, much worse than a Nose. So what's your thought about that kid?
Sure. So in his position, so he's seat 1, which that makes the fish a lot better, and this deck likes to mull really low. Like you generally don't keep like first 7s unless they're like real good. But with like this is a finals game, of course, so if he can keep a hand that's just like very solid, like turn 1 fish, like that will win a lot of games, and like not leave himself up to variance. That's a big consideration. And also like turn 1 Noses, like they're just not too common. There's like it takes some pretty specific combinations of cards to make them work, and they can also be like pretty hard to pilot. Especially like dockside counts 0, and no interaction's been used, but like obviously no one's got mana, but like mulling specifically for a turn 1 Nas is just not very like realistic. So I would pretty much always keep a turn 1 fish in his position.
Also, of course, we don't know what the rest of their hands was.
Yeah.
So this is you never know, right? Yeah, I don't remember. I think they had a Paradise Mantle or something like that, but I don't remember the rest.
He had a Gitaxian probe, which actually makes it a good amount better, because then he also gets to like see if there's interaction first or whatever. But yeah, I don't remember the rest of it, or don't know it at all.
Right. So Skylar, I wanna know, what do you remember what your hand was that you kept?
Yeah. So I had a couple. It was a little unfortunate. I ended up going down to 4. A lot of my hands were just like just like mana or interaction, like nothing keepable. So when I see this 4, I kind of laugh at it. It's Volcanic Island, Underworld Breach, Brain Freeze, Lion's Eye Diamond. So I got the full package.
Oh my god.
Not enough mana to cast anything, but like for a 4, it's like this hand can very realistically, like if Ryan goes all in and he gets stopped, and there's like the table's kind of empty, if I draw my second land, I can I can like brain freeze myself for a bit, and then next turn just LED win with the breach. And it's like I don't feel great about the hand, but like for a 4 at this table, I've had a lot worse 4s.
That seems kind of like the dream 4. Honestly, I wasn't expecting you to keep like interaction. I was like, your rock style, like it was really just like I knew for sure me and Marco were gonna mulligan for some interaction. So I'm just like, oh man, hopefully just you were like, I was hoping you would just like mulligan really low, that you have like a piece and just can't find the other one.
Mhm.
and just don't get there if like Ryan tries to go for it and we stop him. And
What did you mulligan to, Luis?
I think I'm mulligan a 5. Do you remember? I think I'm mulligan a 5.
I think so. We both went to 5, I think.
I had 2 lands, intuition, force of will, and I don't know what was it. All right, so it was 2 lands, mana vault, pact of negation, and force of will.
Okay.
Oh no, I guess I went down to 6 because then I had a intuition in my hand. So I think it was 6 that I mulligan down to. So I looked at my hand, I'm like, you know what? This isn't that bad. I do have interaction if I really need to on this turn 1. If Ryan goes for it, I'll show a force pitching the pact. And I'm pretty sure that might have changed Ryan's play, because I think he had also he could have presented breach combo on turn 1, but he Gip Pro'd me, saw my 2 pieces of interaction, and I saw his body language shift. So I think he was like, I have to wait. So he definitely had this like cocky attitude going into it until he Gip Pro'd me. And I think he was trying to get some cards out of the fish and then hopefully wait for you, Skylar, to go for it, and then him just like win on top. So he shows a fish. Marco just feeds him once. I, at the very end, should have fed him once because I had my mana vault and I should have just had it out just in case for like Crom or Adnos. But I was playing like really safe and really scared and really conservative.
I think it was the right way to play, though, especially with that. Like, we starve the fish, and that's what makes it so it was easy to stop Ryan, I think.
Right. I mean, at the very end, at least when it was finally gone, I should have like cast it, but I was I was being like very conservative because I'm like, I know there's 3 dockside decks here. I'm also keeping accounts for the math for Kenrith for the dockside, and I think at one point, like with my rock and one more rock, he would have had enough to net 1, I think. I don't remember, but I was like, oh man, I just don't want to put out the other mana vault out. And we finally get to Ryan's turn that he, I believe you put down a mystic, you put down a study, right, Marco, in like turn 1 or turn 2?
No, so my mole was a Flusterstorm, 2 lands, Dark Ritual, and Enlightened Tutor. So my thought was, I don't have a fish on turn 1, I don't have Ristic on turn 2, unfortunately, but I have a fish on turn 2. But my luck was that my first draw was a mana crypt. So all of a sudden, I could have just have a Ristic on turn 2. So I don't know if you remember that. So Ryan pays the fish on the turn 2, and at the end step, I look at you, Luis, and I tell you, shall I feed the fish? And you look at me and you were like, please don't. Because what I could have done was Enlightened Tutor for Ristic, on my turn land a Mana Crypt and then Ristic. And then I would have fed 3 cards, but then for a Ristic. So I feel like I did the right play to not do anything, but then I was super lucky because I find a fish on the top of the library. So I didn't tutor for anything to not feed them, but then I get a fish. And then obviously I played the fish on turn 2, and I think that really got me into the game. So I think that I do think I was my game was very lucky. I want to say, actually, if I didn't say yet, I think like I got the nuts draw. Like my first 5 wasn't the nuts, but I got the nuts draw. But I think that moment in which I didn't feed Ryan a bunch of cards was also the moment that didn't make me lose the game a little bit. So yeah.
Yeah, I know at some point, I think he tried to go for a win, and then Skylar, you had a big chat spell to stop his win attempt. Please tell us what you did.
Yeah. So he casts Final Fortune, and from me, I'm another wrong side player. I know that's like scarier than Adnaz, because that means when you're casting Final Fortune, that means I guaranteed have the win. He's gonna untap with the mana, and he's gonna untap with the mana for interaction too. So I was so scared, and so my hand at this point, I think the game had progressed a bit. I whiffed on 1 land, and then I think I finally hit. But I had I think my 2 new cards in hand were Chain of Vapor and this Force of Negation. And so I know that this like cannot go through, or else like he probably wins. I figure that he has a counter spell or something. Just because like he was so calm, and this Ryan's demeanor this whole game has been like he was like very very calm the whole time. But like I have this very big decision for myself, which is whether I pitch the chain of vapor or whether I pitch the brain freeze. And I thought for a long time about this, and like some people were talking to me after the game, but I ultimately ended up pitching the brain freeze because like that kind of like shuts me out. But like at the same time, there was I think at this point Marco might have had a Ristic, or he still had his fish or something, and it's like I'm not doing this win soon because there's I can't play through a fish or a Ristic or whatever, and this chain of vapor can very realistically I was pretty sure this force was getting countered. The chain of vapor is kind of brutal against a breach, after an LED or something. It can be really tough to recover from. So I ultimately, force of negation, the final fortune, pitching my brain freeze, leaving up this chain of vapor, and it just resolves. And I was very surprised. Yeah, that's kind of my contribution to the game. I didn't do much elsewise, but yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a great. It was like the moment in which you would have lost. So it was a great. It was the one card that really changed the game.
Yeah, I think beforehand he was also trying to like set up for win, and I showed him my pact of negation. I'm pretty sure he was expecting me to like cast a force pitching the pact, but I just showed him pact, and I was hoping he'd waste a counter spell to counter it, and I think he just wanted me to tap out most of my mana to to let it go through. So he just like let it resolve and counter his stuff, and I know at some point he like started. He just said, I think he just said fuck it, started to rip it. And just started digging for cards, and he proceeded to feed the fuck out of Marco.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
I think that was what made me win the game, because at some point it was a counter war between three people, and he was really trying to win, and I drew something like 10 cards, and once you draw 10 cards on a value deck, like, it's impossible. And I also, they were very good 10 cards as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, after he was stopped, I was also, before you even like casted that force on the final fortune, I was trying to stop you too. And, I was talking with you guys of maybe we let it resolve, let him go to his extra turn, stop him there, and then he dies and we don't have to worry about him. I know, Marco, you were like on the fence about it. Like, did you not think we could stop him in his extra turn?
I think that giving them the opportunity to A, draw an extra card because they go to the next turn, and B, tapping, and so being able to set up, because they could have just have some rocks and do other stuff, so they could have put themselves in a situation in which they had 5 extra mana. So obviously it's so much easier to counter one spell when they have 0 mana, they then fight them on their extra turn when they have extra 5 mana. So, and I lost many games because Final Fortune resolved. So I don't know, I was a bit scared to go, and I think that was the right choice to do it that way. Especially, actually, you know what? They had a defense grid in their hand. So imagine they go to the extra turn, defense grid. That's it, game. Because you're one counter, you need 2 counters now, right? So instead, the Final Fortune is 1 counter. So
yeah. I get I know why you're. I understand the fear of it, but like, man, I was just like thinking about it like really hard. Like, man, if we stop him on that turn, he's dead, and we don't have to worry about him. Like, that's 1 player down. But yeah, I don't know how much different the game would have been if we let it go through, but at least we know it didn't result in him taking the game away. But Marco,
I lost a game. Yeah. So yes, I don't want to say that I lost a game because of that. And the defense grid is very hard to counter because
I had a Force of Will, but yeah.
Yeah, of course. I didn't know about your Force of Will, but yeah. Anyway,
Really?
sorry, yeah.
Oh, I don't know if you guys believed him, but yeah, like Ryan was like trying to like deflect fear away from himself to me. I'm like, he's got intuition, guys. I'm like, yeah, what is that year of rock side player? What is intuition gonna do? And he was like just telling you guys my entire hand, and I was like, yeah. Okay. I don't think this politicking is gonna work out how you think it is, dude. Your rock side in one. It's not gonna change anything. But yeah, I did have the Force of Will.
Yeah, I think like intuition is scary, but I don't think you would just like go full on with two rock side player and me, right? So it's like it's a problem, the intuition, but not at that moment. Like you know, not in the moment in which you cast in a Final Fortune, right? So yeah.
Yeah. So Marco, tell us what that turn was like when you untapped with like a billion cards in your hand.
Yeah, I mean, I saw my hand and I generally thought, if I don't win this game, I am the worst player in the world, because I felt like I played well at the point by not putting a bunch of rocks and feeding the fish, which I think he actually paid back a lot. At the point, I had the Crypt, which I kept in my hand for like 4 turns, right? So that, I think like that paid back. I had a bunch of rocks, right? But then I thought, if someone else has a rock side, a dark side, I just throw the game. But then I drew a Dauntless Dismantle. So I thought, I can just set up here and win the game. Play all the rocks, play all my engine, play the Dauntless Dismantle, and if they have a dark side, they have to wait another turn. And no one would play a dark side with an eye count against a Kenrit, because actually I also had a Image. If you play a dark side when I don't dismantle on my field, I literally make infinite mana on the spot. That was obviously incredibly well set up. I waited longer than I should have, but I thought whatever they do, I either draw cards or make treasure, because also I had a smoothing tie at some point.
Oh my god!
And and so I thought, like, I want to play slowly, but then I saw the win. And I say, you know what? I just go for it. I'm sure you remember this. I had a Ranger Captain of Heals and a Image. So I had 2 Ranger Captain. And I actually, sorry, I have to say this. I remember there was the end turn of Ryan that Luis, he packed to exile my Ranger Captain, and in response, I sacrifice it, and then I bring it back to the battlefield with Kendra ability. And I think Luis looked at me, be like, yeah, I mean, this game, what can you do against that? So it was brutal. I like when Ryan tried to go for it, and all the counter spell war just like drew me like I just had the game at the point. And
I would say I did kind of misplay, because I should have done that at the beginning of Ryan's turn to force you to do it there. That way he didn't do anything, instead of at the end step. And I knew you could have brought it back, but I was like, you have a billion treasures. I need you to spend your mana.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I need, like, this is the only thing I can do that's relevant, just to get you to spend your mana. And yeah, I mean, you did. You still had a lot of mana left over still, but like, I'm like, I have to do something. Yeah. And maybe it's just get rid of the Kenrith, but you can still recast it. So, I mean, I guess that's a misplay on my part. I should have done it at the beginning of Ryan's turn, and then I should have just hit the Kenrith just to force you to spend 6 mana to do it. But it was, yeah, so a minor misplay there. But yeah, Skylar, how did you feel untapping on your turn, looking at Marco's dominating board state?
It was so brutal. I was like, there's like a 95% chance that Marco wins this. It's like maybe he goes crazy and messes up somewhere, but it was like this game's over. Like, especially that Dismantler. Like I drew a tutor. I was like, maybe, tutor Dockside, and like, that could get me there. Of course, you had your Force of Will still, and I couldn't get through that. But like, there's a chance, like maybe I could, Dockside, Breach, and then tutor, and then grinding station. But Dauntless Dismantler, it's like every single like powerful draw in my deck is turned off. There's like I'm banking on you just like drawing a cyclonic rift and like an ancient tomb and that getting through, and that's that's not exactly the most likely thing. It's just like I think most of my turns this game were like draw go, and it's like, and like even if I cast a spell, I've got to like pay 2 mana. Yeah, there's a Ristic and there's an Esper Sentinel. And it's like, okay, let me get my Commander Master's box already.
Can I say something actually about the dismantle real quick? I played, there was a couple of pods at CARDART in which I played Kenrit against a triple Rockside pod, which I never gone to turn 3. So we played like 5 hours and I never saw the turn 3. And I'd been looking at cards to add to just like stop the misery, and I added the dismantler specifically for Rockside. So it was very, like, I think actually, even though I was super ahead, of course, it was one of the cards that, made me just like play all my rocks and just be like, tranquil at the point and be like, okay, I have the dismantler that just like stops everybody from winning out of nowhere at least. So
yeah, it's a very good card against the deck. Like the only way we get through it is with Lion's Eye Diamond, which thankfully doesn't have, but like besides that, it's just like every single win in the deck.
Yeah, the worst part too is that coming into my final turn, like once you had the dismantle out, it sucked because in my hand was Adnos, Thoracle, and Consultation in the final turn. And I'm like, I played way too safe. I should have got this Mana Vault, and it came back to bite me because I could have like at the end step or in response to yourself cast Adnos and hopefully had some stuff out. But then at that point, you also had Penrith to draw me a card and kill me. And I'm just looking at my hand with Adnos, Intuition, Force, Thassa, Consultation. I'm like, damn, this is tragic. It's right here in my hand, and I can't go for it. With these 2 Ranger Captains, Esper, Study, Kenrith, he had like 11 mana or something. Like, wow. And I also was like scared of ripping it too, just because like maybe Ryan had like a flare of duplication, a copy it too. So I was scared of that too. But no, yeah, I couldn't even. I was like, yeah, I can't cast anything here. This sucks. Pass the turn.
It was very, I think like, it was, I have never had such a commanding position ever in my life. It was just like, I drew every single card you want to have down and I put it down, so that was insane. Even like the double ranger is particularly brutal because you cannot even burn upon the wind. That's what happened, right? I cracked the ranger at the beginning of my turn and then in response try and burn upon the wind. But then I can just crack the other one in response. So even if it resolves, you can, it's just like, you just lock out of the game, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep, and then you proceed to go to your turn after that and just win the game with a breach combo of your own.
Yeah. I have to say, I almost misplayed that because I thought I just need that so I had the Lion Tudor, which thankfully I didn't use for the Ristic Study back in turn 1, and so I could just use it, forget the breach, right? So, I mean, that kind of like turn back. And I misplayed because I thought that, I don't know why I was thinking, I can just tutor for LED from breach. So I tutor for breach and then tutor for LED. But then I realized I needed to draw a card. So Skylar killing. Yeah, I don't know why. Like sometimes you just like so many things are going on, you just like forget like the most basic things, right?
Yeah.
And Skylet bounced my Henrik back, so I didn't even. I needed to spend. How much is that? Like 9 mana.
Yeah.
Like thank God I had the Born Upon the Wind. Otherwise, like maybe I could like it's possible I would have thrown if I didn't have Born Upon the Wind. So. Yeah, I definitely would have played that game so much better, but we get there in the end. That's all that matters, I guess.
Yep, you got it at the end. Very commanding, good gameplay with your interaction, cracking your rangers, and doing all that stuff. And yeah, you champion for that tournament. Congratulations again.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. It was a pleasure to play together. It was really fun. It was a really fun day. And yeah, I had a lot of nice time. we met new people. Like, of course, Luis, I never met you before. Skyler, we met a couple of times. It's always nice to play against and again. You see, like, it's the beautiful thing is that you don't only see yourself improving, you see other people growing up with you, and the game, of course. And I don't know, it's a lot of fun. I think the community of the bear is fantastic. So it's great. It's been a pleasure. For sure.
Yeah, it's always great seeing people, especially like you said, recurring faces and them evolving. Yeah, and I believe it's my first time meeting both of you, right? I don't think we've ever played against each other. Yeah, I know mostly I go to a lot of the Sacramento tournaments up there. So are you guys more like, I know you guys are more farther out, like in the Bay Area, right? Instead of like Sacramento? Yeah, that's probably why then. Yeah. But yeah, so that's how our tournament experience went. I know you got a pretty fat prize, Marco. Just the it was just a Mox Diamond, right? From the vault, I believe.
Yes, it is. If I can add a little anecdote, I think everybody knows this.
I was gonna tell you to say it. Yes, please.
Thank you. Friday, I got married, actually, and it's been the last 2 months. Thank you very much, guys. And in the last 2 months, I was saying to my wife, I was saying to her, I really want to buy a Mox Diamond. It's a bit expensive, but because we didn't have a ring, right? Because we're not that traditional. I will buy a diamond for myself, a Mox Diamond. And the fact that this tournament happened the day after we get married and I win the diamond, it means everything. It's like that card, it holds so much, everything. There's so much memory associated to it and so much sentimental value. So it was kind of like, I was saying to her actually how lucky I got, because I got very lucky at the end, and she was like, well, that was just the destiny that wanted you to get the diamond, man. And it's like, a little bit was, right? A little bit was. So yeah, no, it's like, it makes it even better, really a great win. So yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's
yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And then me and Skylar got our little Commander Masters packs. Skylar, did you pull anything good? I pulled dog shit.
Pretty much the same. I got one foilage demonic tutor, and then I think every bad legendary creature in the set.
I pulled what I thought, because it was Japanese. I thought it was the foil full art Grand Abolisher. I'm like, oh, sick! This is great. I'm like, let me see how much this is at now. And I'm like with the app, the TCG app, and it pulls up Pure Steel Paladin. I'm like, oh no. And I just didn't get. I literally got complete dookie. It was just the worst packs I've ever seen. I think the total value of the whole thing was like $40. I'm like, yeah. Jesus Christ. Another misplay. I should have just got store credit and bought some stuff I was missing for the deck. Oh man, this feels so bad. I literally walked out of this top 4 completely empty-handed. Oh no.
I don't know if you saw this, but Ori posted in the Discord today. He opened the third box that because Ryan picked MH3 instead, and he got the Jeweled Lotus in there.
Oh, that's tilting. No. Jesus. Oh, we just got giga unlucky, Skylar. Holy shit. It was not our day. Oh god. All right. Well, with all that said, are you guys planning on going to any tournaments this coming up weekend?
Well,
Marco?
I'm going for my honeymoon actually, so we're going to be away for 3 weeks. This really gave me a lot of energy. So as soon as I'm gonna come back, any tournament, I think you're probably gonna see me there. But is there any tournament next weekend you guys plan to go?
I am. Skylar, are you doing any tournaments?
Nah, I think next week I'm off to Japan for a little bit, but I mostly only play these local small tournaments where whenever a big tournament comes in here, I'm not flying out or whatever. So yeah, put us onto a couple of the local tournaments happening here. Okay,
well, the biggest one that's happening, I guess, locally here is next week over at Room to Game over in the Sacramento area. I forgot, Cameron Park area. There's another one in LA, but I think that one has a proxy limit, so I think me and my friends are just gonna go over to Room to Game. But yeah, me, I do a bit of grinding. I drive up and down California and go to as many of the tournaments as I can. Unfortunately, a lot of the more local ones, they don't really advertise just because they're small, which kind of sucks. I think it would help them out and just help out the West Coast if all the events would just post on Top Deck, just so people are aware of like where these events are happening, even if they're like weeklies, small weeklies, just so people can be aware of it. But yeah, so you guys have fun on your trips. I've actually been to Japan, Skylar, a few years ago, pre-pandemic. Spent a week there and it was fantastic. So I don't know, is this your first time going there, or you been there before?
I've been a couple.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, where are you gonna be staying at? I stayed at Akasaka when I went.
Oh, cool. I'm kind of going around. I'm going to Tokyo, Osaka, and then I'm gonna try out Okinawa.
Nice. And Marco, where are you going for your honeymoon?
We're going to first. We go to Hawaii. It's a conference there, so we're gonna start from the conference, and then we go to Alaska. We're gonna spend a bit of time traveling. We want to see the glaciers, the bears.
Wow.
I'm very excited about them.
Well, I hope you're safe out there. Please make it back. That sounds a little daunting.
God, yeah. No, fingers crossed. I'm sure you're gonna be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll wish you the best. Okay. Well,
Thanks.
with all that said, guys, do you guys want to shout out your handles, or where can people find you guys? Skylar?
I'm not really online like that. You can follow me on Moxfield. I'm Crypt Rats. That's about it. Yeah.
Right, Marco. What about you?
Yeah, I'm a bit off the grid as well. I'm a bit of a boomer. So Discord is actually for me like the biggest social media I've ever had. I'm on Moxfield as well. I have different stock. I have a couple of decks. I have this deck that we play for this tournament. So please check it out if you like it. It's actually a shout out. It's a modified version of the play to win 10 red deck. It has like maybe like 10 cards that are different. One of which though is the Dauntless Dismantler, which really
nice.
recommend it to play. Yeah, so but yeah, so that's about it.
All right, fantastic. Well, for others that want to follow me, you can find me at Dixie Normus at just about everywhere. Also, here on this channel, please like and subscribe. If you were at the CARDART tournament, feel free to post below if you were any games with us, if you want to shed some more insights or just share how it went. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for another episode. We'll see you all next time. Have a good night.
Yeah.